The plot below shows the pressures corresponding to 6 distinct temperatures measured on 3 different gas thermometers. How could the hypothesis that there is an absolute zero of temperature have been falsified, essentially by this plot, or by the experiments this plot represents? So when I'm talking about the 6 distinct temperatures, I've got these kind of vertical lines here. There's also one that's kind of here through my vertical axis, although it's unlabeled, so I'm not sure if I can guess. I mean, maybe that corresponds to 0 degrees Celsius, but I don't know if I should assume that or not. But I think that's one of the 6, and then there's 3 more here, right? But the idea is somebody constructed 3 different thermometers, and as we saw with the kind of ideal gas-based thermometer, if you haven't calibrated it, then that manometer really only tells you what the pressure inside the thermometer is. So if you haven't established, in that sense, a temperature scale that thermometer measures in, and that's historically, if you kind of think back, like hundreds of years before good definitions of things like Fahrenheit and Celsius were established, this is kind of what doing experiments involving temperature would look like. You maybe don't know what the temperature scale is, but let's say we did, like, I didn't label everything here. There is a temperature axis in this graph, and I could maybe have labeled, like maybe this is, like if we assume perhaps that this is 0 degrees Celsius, there could be numbers for each of these. And then if I plot back these lines, what should happen if absolute zero is a good idea, right, is, and if the ideal gas law is true, then the pressure should wind up going to 0 once the temperature reaches 0. And that's kind of based on that law we looked at earlier. Pressure is proportional to temperature with constant volume, which is really the rule that kind of applies to these kinds of thermometers. But the question we're asked is, how could the hypothesis that there is an absolute zero of temperature have been falsified? So the way I'm looking at this is kind of like, you could say this is evidence for absolute zero, but following the scientific method, we don't really do an experiment and then prove that something is true. We formulate a hypothesis, and then the result of the experiment is either the hypothesis survives one more day and continues to hold up because the experiment validated it, or it was clearly found to be false. So I'm asking here, well, what could have happened? Like, let's say historically, if things had happened different and we found out that the idea of absolute zero was actually not a good idea, like how could that have come out? And a simple answer, I'm going to try to sketch what I think that might have looked like. Like if we took this same plot we have here and look at it, what if, if we had like one straight line based on the data for one set of thermometers, and then here's maybe another straight line based on the other one, and then maybe here's the third. And when I go back and connect those here, I suddenly find, oh, they're not, like, for one thing, they're not kind of all hitting at one spot, right? If you see what I did here, it's kind of weird looking. I don't know if I'm drawing that perfectly there, but hopefully it conveys the idea that if the lines had looked like this, and there wasn't that spot on the horizontal axis where they clearly all went through 0, then you would say, yeah, that doesn't really suggest that there's anything there at, where temperatures kind of below that don't really make sense. But this convergence here, in that sense, does not falsify the idea of an absolute zero of temperature. Let's see how that compares to the answer. It says there could have been no convergence at all.